Hey guys, so my name's Maria and I'm proud of the young voters. Today I'm starting up my current event podcast, and in this podcast I hope just to be talking about current events in general and issues globally around the world that we should be taking a closer look at. This week on Wednesday I did want to go over and talk about what is going on in Jerusalem and what does this have to do with the Israeli and Palestinian violence, and how does Ramadan play a role into this, and all sorts of things that are going on. So I do want to start off with a little bit of background information because this issue has been going on for about 100 years, and it is pretty interesting and is important that we kind of build a background on what I'm going to be talking about today, just so I can give you guys a good idea of what has happened in the past and how that's kind of fueled the future, the present, what is happening now. So basically, Britain took control of the area known as Palestine after the ruler of that war of the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire, was defeated in World War I. The land was inhabited by a Jewish minority and Arab majority. Tensions between the two groups grew when the international community gave Britain the task of establishing a national home in Palestine for Jewish people. For Jews, it's their ancestral home, but for Arabs, they also claimed the land and opposed the move. So there's these two different groups that were kind of forced to share the land. So between the 1920s and 40s, the number of Jews living there grew immensely. There was lots of people that were under persecution, especially in Europe, because of religious reasons. They were seeking a homeland after the Holocaust. They were seeking somewhere that they could go to feel safe. So in 1947, the United Nations voted for Palestine to be split into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem becoming an international city. So Jerusalem would be an international city for meeting religious purposes that was open to all. So this plan was accepted by Jewish leaders, but the Arabs rejected it, and it was never really implemented, so that didn't work. In 1948, they really weren't able to solve this problem, so Britain left the Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel. So Britain said, look, this is becoming a big issue, and we need to do something about it. You guys aren't resolving it yourselves, so we are going to create the State of Israel because nothing is being solved. At the time, many Palestinians objected, and a war followed. Troops from neighboring Arab countries invaded. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled and were forced out of their homes in what they call al-Nabka, the catastrophe. By the time the fighting ended in ceasefire of the following year, Israel controlled most of the territory, so Israel took back control of the territory. Jerusalem was then divided between Israeli forces in the west and Jordanian forces in the east. Because there was never a peace agreement, each side blamed the other that there are more wars and fighting in the decades which followed. So this kind of whole issue has to do with religion, beliefs, and share of land, because the Jewish want to be free and they want a place to worship their religions, but at the same time they struggle because Muslims also want a place to worship peacefully as well. So this is how Israel kind of became, or in the past was becoming, this land that was of issue, and violence continued because of this. So now Today is Wednesday, the 12th of May. Today, there's been increased violence this week in the Holy Land of Jerusalem, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what that means and why that's been going on, because we all have a little bit of background now. So, for weeks, this has been happening, I think, since the end of Ramadan, which is a period of time for Muslims where they fast, and it's something they do in their religion. So for weeks now, Palestinian protesters and Israeli police have both been kind of being violent towards each other, having issues, and this is happening every day in the old city of Jerusalem, which is the city that is supposed to be the place where everyone can come gather and be together. And it's a sacred site for both Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So this is a huge conflict in the Middle East, and it's just not going over well. Jerusalem has been the scene of violent confrontations between Jews and Arabs for over 100 years, which I talked about before, and it is already one of the biggest cities on earth where they're having these issues constantly over and over again, with these constant clashes between the different groups, the Israeli and the Palestinians. So this morning, rockets came out of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, in Israel, and they pounded the territory with airstrikes on Wednesday. So on this Gaza Strip, there are thousands of homes, there are high-rise apartment buildings that families live in, and these were bombed. So the death toll on this strip, the Gaza Strip, was about 43 Palestinians, and 13 of those 43 were children, and 3 of those 43 were women. This is what the health ministry has reported in Israel. Israeli airstrikes have leveled 2 multi-story apartment towers in the Gaza Strip where 2 million Palestinians have lived. So the Gaza Strip is a huge, almost like in the United States how we have a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood type area. And this is also known as the capital of two peoples because Israel views Jerusalem as a unified eternal capital. Palestinians want these territories in their future state, which are Gaza and the West Bank, and East Jerusalem serving as the eventual capital. But Israel annexed the eastern part of the city in a move not recognized internationally. So this was back in 1967. And at this point in time, it's actually really important to point out that the root of a lot of these issues happening is because of the Ramadan and how that is celebrated in the Muslim culture and that huge divide in Israel. So, along with growing tensions because of Ramadan every year, there are some discriminatory policies that have been put in place, and I am going to read these policies from the BBC because I do not want to have them incorrect and I want to fully educate everyone. So the BBC says that Jews born in East Jerusalem are Israeli citizens, while Palestinians from East Jerusalem are granted a form of permanent residency that can be revoked if they live outside the city for an extended period. They can apply for citizenship, but it's a long and uncertain process, and most choose not to because they don't recognize Israel control. Israel has built Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem that are home to some 220,000 people. 220,000 people. It has severely limited the growth of Palestinian neighborhoods, leading to overcrowding and the unauthorized construction of thousands of homes that are at the risk of demolition. So, because of discrimination in Israel, all of these Jewish families are being forced to live confined in this city because they are not allowed to go elsewhere. And just like intermingling with races, although that isn't the idea is still there, the government does not want the different religions to come together. So it's definitely not okay and definitely should be spoke out about because I don't think enough people really know what is going on in Israel and what is this conflict leading to and why are these conflicts happening, because it's a serious issue, and although it may not seem that urgent or immense to us in the United States, it is really, really important to be informed of what's going on. So this is in Old City, where they are forcing all of these Jewish people to live. So I did want to clarify on that. In towns such as Lod in Israel, there have been increasingly high rates of violence and between Arabs and Jewish, and this has left people terrified. Families are hiding they don't know what to do, and they're waiting for government aid. What I'm going to talk about next is, what is the government of Israel doing to assist its people? So, Israel is trying to protect their people by using military forms of military, such as rockets and other types of guns, I believe, to try to protect their citizens, but they can only do so much. Israel forces are kind of fighting against this group called the Hamas group, and I'm not exactly sure a lot about them, but I do know that. So after a little bit more research, I did find that the Hamas group is a Palestinian nationalism, Islamic religion, nationalism, anti-Zionism, one-state solution, anti-Semitic group. They call themselves the Muslim Brotherhood, and their colors are green. Their religion is Islam. So the real issue here is with land, and when the newest violence broke out, it was on last Friday. So what happened was, violence broke out last Friday at Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is in Jerusalem, amid growing anger over the potential eviction of Palestinians from homes on land claimed by Jewish settlers. So the issue here is land and people living in integration of the two races into one place. So the Palestinians are mad because the Jewish settlers claim the land, and the Jewish settlers are saying, we want our land back. But the Palestinians are saying, no, we live here, this is our home. So this has escalated into violence, and the Hamas group is stepping in, and there have been many shootings, and Israel is trying to protect itself and its Jewish population, but they are having trouble, and people are terrified for their lives. They don't know what to do. So from the United States, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki opened her daily news briefing with a statement about the situation, saying that President Joe Biden had just received an update from his national security team and that his primary focus was on de-escalation. So the United States wants to help de-escalate the issues going on in Israel, because the United States wants to help out other people. So Psaki said that the United States condemned rocket attacks by Hamas and other groups, including attacks on Jerusalem, and that Biden's support for Israel's security for its legitimate right to defend itself and its people is fundamental and will never waver. Jerusalem is a city of such importance of people of faith around the world, must be a place of coexistence. The White House wants there to be coexistence, and they want to help Israel come to find coexistence between people that are Jewish and people that are religiously affiliated with Islam. So there's two main factors going on here. It's these two groups not wanting to live amongst each other, which are the Jewish and the Islams. And then the other is with the whole land thing, which plays into not living together, or Jews claiming Palestinian lands or Palestinians claiming Jewish lands. So there's definitely a lot going on, and I only dug a little bit in because there's just so many details and there is so much information on the internet that anyone could look up and find about this. But that's all the time I have for this week. I just wanted to share a little bit about what's going on, and I'll be back next Wednesday for my next segment. Thanks, guys. Bye.